Welcome to Geometry, Lesson 25 with Ms. Barrett. So in this lesson, we're going to start off by going over our Lesson 24, Multiplying and Dividing Fractions. Practice answers. So last class, we talked about multiplying and dividing fractions. And what we realized is that for multiplying fractions, the rule is that you multiply the numerators across, and then you multiply the denominators across. And the rule for division is that if you have a fraction divided by a fraction, you must multiply by the reciprocal or the flip of the second fraction. Let's look at our answers. We had 6 problems, and it says use the rules of multiplying and dividing fractions to calculate the answers to the following problems. Okay, make sure to see what each problem is asking for before you start to do it. So number 1, we have 3/5 times, so this is multiplication, 6/7. So since it's multiplication, all we're going to do is we're going to multiply the numerators across. 3 times 6, which is 18. And then we're going to multiply the denominators across. 5 times 7, which is 35. So 3/5 times 6/7 is 18/35, or 18/35. Next up, 1/6 times 1/2, which is multiplication again. So all we're going to do is multiply our numerator and our denominators. 1 times 1 is 1. 6 times 2 is 12. And lastly, for multiplication, 5/7 times 4/9 is 5 times 4, which is 20, and 7 times 9, which is 63. So it's 20/63. All right, now division. 2/4 divided by. Now this symbol means divided by, so this is division. 2/4 divided by 1/7. Okay, so now since we're dealing with division, we're going to take that second fraction and we're going to flip it. We're going to flip it. So instead of it being 2/4 divided by 1/7, we're going to multiply by the flipped second fraction. So it becomes 2/4 times 7/1. And then you can just multiply across. Use the rules of multiplication. So 2 times 7 is 14. 4 times 1 is 4. Let's do that again. Here we have 8/11 divided by 5/9. This is division. We're dividing fractions. So we have to take the second fraction, okay, and flip it. So you have to flip that and then multiply. So it becomes 8/11 times 9/5. Not 5/9, but 9/5. We have to flip that second fraction. And then you're just going to multiply across. So 8 times 9 is 72. 11 times 5 is 55. So the answer is 72/55. Now you might also see it written as like this, 2/5 divided by, this line means divided by 6/4. Okay, the second fraction is 6/4. So we have to flip that fraction and make it 4/6 and then multiply by the first fraction. So 2/5 times 4/6, then you multiply across. 2 times 4 is 8, 5 times 6 is 30. So the answer is 8/30. Okay, now that we have that squared away, let's talk about multiplying and dividing fractions word problems. Okay, so the steps. So a word problem or a real world scenario, it just means it's going to give you a scenario in words, couple sentences. So first thing to do is you want to read the word problem and underline important information, especially the question. The question is really, really important. Make sure you're filling out these notes along with me. Okay, so we have to first read and underline important information. Let's do an example. So I have example number 1 for multiplying. 4/5 of all students at Woodlawn High School are attending the prom. Of those students, 2/3 have rented a limousine for transportation to prom. How many students have rented a limousine for prom? So let's look at our important information. We have here that 4/5 of students are attending the prom. Okay, and then we also have that of those 4/5 of students, 2/3 have rented a limousine. Those are important information. They give you numbers, and we're going to need those numbers to answer this question. The question is, how many students have rented a limousine for prom? Now, this is a multiplication problem. How do we know? Words like of shows multiplication. Okay, so 2/3 of 4/5 means that we have to multiply 4/5 times 2/3 to figure out how many students rented a limousine for prom. So we know we have 4/5 of the students that are attending prom. Of those, 2/3 rented a limousine. The question is how many students rented a limousine for prom? So now that we know it's multiplication, we've written out. So step 2 here is draw a picture if you can. We didn't need a picture here. Okay, you could have written a picture like this and say this is 4/5, and then say this is 2/3 of 4/5. We want to know how much is this? Who rented the limousine? Okay, how many kids rented the limousine? Well, we write our number sentence based off the information. Okay, step 3. So we said 4/5 total, right? And of those 4/5, of meaning multiplication, 2/3. So 4/5 times 2/3 of the students use a limousine or are purchasing a limousine for prom. So now we're just going to use our multiplication rule of fractions, which means to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So 4 times 2 is 8, and then 5 times 3 is 15. Okay. Now the answer is 8/15. Now, when you solve it, you have to write your answer in the correct units. Okay, and where you get your units from is looking at the question. So the question was, how many students have rented a limousine for prom? The answer would be 8/15 students rented a limousine for prom. Okay, so not only do you have to have your answer in numbers, but you have to answer it according to the question. So the answer wouldn't just be 8/15, because 8/15 can be representing anything. So you have to say 8/15 of students rented a limousine for prom. Okay. All right, number 2, for multiplication, Bobby has collected a collection, of 18 video games. 1/3 of those video games are sports games. So that's a typo. That should say sports. How many of Bobby's video games are sports games? So let's look at our important information. We know that Bobby has 18 video games. Sorry, wrong color. We know that Bobby has 18 video games. Of those 18, 1/3 is sports games. So 18 total, but 1/3 is sports games. Of those, remember that word of. Of means multiplication. Okay. How many, the question, how many of Bobby's video games are sports games? So we can say we have 18 games in total. Okay, 1/3 of these games are sports games. Okay, so 18 video games, 1/3 is sports games. So we underlined our important information and we drew a picture. You don't have to draw a picture if you don't want to, but it could be helpful. Okay, now we have to write our number sentence. That's step 3. So we know we have 18 games using the information in our word problem. 1/3 of those games is sports games. So of indicates multiplication. So 18 times 1/3, because 1/3 of those games are sports games. Now we have our number sentence. We can just use our multiplication rule. So this 18 is basically like saying 18 over 1. Remember, all whole numbers can be represented as a number over 1. So for example, the number 2 is actually also equal to 2 over 1. The number 3 is actually also equivalent to 3 over 1. Doesn't change it, because remember, any number divided by 1 is just itself. So we have 18 divided by 1 times 1/3. And we're going to use our multiplication rules, which means to multiply the numerators, which is 18 over 1, which is 18 times 1, which is 18, and then 1 times 3, which is 3. Now we have 18 divided by 3. We could put that in our calculator, or if you already recognize it, 18 divided by 3 is 6. Okay, so that means that our answer here is 6, but it's not just 6, because remember, you have to use the correct units. The question was, how many of Bobby's video games are sports games? The answer is 6 of Bobby's games are sports games. That's our whole answer. Remember, numbers represent quantity, but they don't answer questions. They don't make the questions, that the numbers make sense. We have to make the numbers make sense with our words, okay? All right, now, division problems. We're going to use the same steps with division problems, just with doing division. So, number 1 says, Angela has a piece of wood that is 3/4 of a foot in length. Okay, so let's draw a picture. So 3/4 of the foot. Okay, so if this is 0, this is 3/4 of a foot. Okay, now she needs to cut pieces that are 1/16 long. So if this is 3/4 of a foot, then I need to cut pieces of 1/16. Okay. How many pieces can Angela cut? Our important information is that she has a piece of wood that is 3/4 of a foot long. Our other important information is that she needs to cut pieces in 1/16 of a foot. The question is, how many pieces can Angela cut? Okay. So basically, if you think about it, if she has 3/4 of a foot and she needs to cut it into 1/16, she's dividing. She's dividing because when you divide, you're making something smaller. So she's cutting them into pieces. Okay. So cutting them into pieces indicates that she's dividing. Okay. Indicates that she's dividing. So let's write our number sentence. So we identified the important information. We drew a picture if we could. And now we're going to do our number sentence. We have 3/4 of a foot. We need to divide it into pieces of 1/16. Okay. Now remember, when you're dividing fractions, you have to take your second fraction and flip it. And then multiply. So it's going to become 3/4 times, or multiplied times, 16/1. Okay. So again, when you're doing division, you have to multiply by the flip of the second fraction. So we flipped 1/16, made it 16/1, and we multiplied. Now we can use our rules of multiplication and just multiply across. 3 times 16, put that in your calculator if you need to, is 48. Okay? 4 times 1 is 4. Okay? And we can actually put that in our calculator and get the answer that 48 divided by 4 is is 12. It's not just 12, but because the question says how many pieces can Angela cut, the answer is she can cut 12 pieces of wood. And that's our whole answer. Remember, in your answer, you need the units for these word problems. You have to be very specific. So if we have our wood that's 3/4 of a foot, and we have to cut it into 1/16, so this would be 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, 4 piece, 5 piece, 6 piece, 7 piece, 8 piece, 9 piece, 10 piece, 11 piece, 12 piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is what her piece of wood would look like, cut up into 1/16. Okay, last but not least, Charles has 2/3 of a pound of chocolate. For Christmas, Charles decided to put 21 of a pound of chocolate in each of his Christmas gift bags for his family members. How many Christmas gift bags can Charles make? Okay, so we read it. Our important information, looking for some numbers. Charles has 2/3 of a pound of chocolate. Okay, that tells us not only how much, but it tells us what units we're going to use. For Christmas, Charles decides to put 2/21 of 1/100 of a pound of chocolate in each of his Christmas bags. The question is, how many Christmas bags can Charles make? Okay. Now, this one is pretty hard to draw a picture for, so we're not going to draw a picture. If you could figure out a way, that's just fine, if it would help you. Now we need to identify what's happening. So he has 2/3 of a pound of chocolate, and he's dividing it into 2/2100. Okay? That's what he's doing. He's dividing it into bags. So we have 2/3, and then we're dividing it into 2/21. Now remember, when you're dividing fractions, you have to flip the second fraction, so it becomes 21/2, and then you have to multiply. Those are our rules of dividing fractions. So the first fraction stays the same. You have to flip the second fraction and multiply. Now when we do that, we get 2 times 21, which is 42, divided by 3 times 2, which is 6. If you put that in your calculator, you get 42 divided by 6, which is equal to 7. So the answer is 7, not just 7, because we can't just have a number. The question asks, how many Christmas gift bags can Charles make? Charles can make 7 gift bags. Bam, and we're done. Okay. So again, a summary is that you have to first read the problem and underline important information, draw a picture if you need to, write a number sentence that models the word problem, and solve it, and the answer must be in correct units. Okay, you have to have words with your answer. Now, remember the rules of multiplying and dividing. You have notes on that already. Okay, now for your quiz review. You're going to have 6 problems that require you to multiply and divide fractions. And then you're going to have two word problems. I will be posting this quiz review answers on Friday along with the quiz, so you'll have something to reference. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.